Well, hello folks, Durk Davidson here, also known as Mr. D. Good day, good morning, good evening, whenever you're watching this. And first of all, it's good to make contact with all my peeps out there in JCPS land. But today we're going to be doing a lesson on conflict. In order to do a conflict lesson, you need to brainstorm first. Conflict is a situation or an issue between 1, 2, 3 or more people. You can say it's an issue, you can say it's a problem, you can say it's a disagreement. But we're going to be talking about how we deal with brainstorming conflict. Now, we're not looking for answers yet today, but we're just going to brainstorm the conflicts that are out there that keep us hopping. In my visits to various schools, probably over 20 this year, I've come up with a lot of situations that students have told me that creates a lot of conflict. So I'll be going up and down the scale of different conflicts. And then after we list our conflicts, we're going to talk about conflict styles, because everybody has their own conflict styles. And that'll wrap up this lesson. Dealing with the students I deal with throughout Jefferson County, whether it be elementary, middle school, or high school, the top conflicts that we always list up here when brainstorming starts off with a lot of these. One I get a lot, and to me the main one now, is social media. Now, best thing that ever happened to us is that we have a social media outlet now. Best things ever happened, but social media also causes a lot of conflict. Also, when I hear from my students a lot, is joking. Okay, it gets out of hand sometimes. Another conflict that we deal with through Jefferson County Public Schools and maybe your community and neighborhoods, in your parks, wherever you have your meetings up with all your friends and everything. We have social media, we have joking, but we also have a lot of issues on clothes, and I'll say / shoes. You might want to look at my writing. I'm pretty good, but I'm going pretty fast, so give me a break on my writing. Another one that I get a lot at our schools is cliques, your jocks. The group of students that maybe are considered your brainiacs, your students that are maybe considered your nerds and your geeks. I get a lot of that. But as far as cliques in schools, causes a lot of conflicts. Also within the schools, a lot of times we have issues with if you're involved in maybe an AP program, a regular program, or an honors program, causes a lot of issue, and students tell me that those are all part of cliques. Also, bullying. A lot of conflict slashed on bullying. I get this a lot too. Sports. Okay, they ask, why sports? Because sports, when you're dealing with sports, a lot of times you have kids that tell me that, you have your braggers, the kids that always talk about how good they are, causes a lot of conflicts. Students that don't know how to handle defeat sometimes causes a lot of conflicts. One thing you'll hear me say a lot in my lessons, it's my mantra, my go-to, is that when your emotions are high, your thinking is low, and a lot of times these comes from some of these conflicts we're having. Family, your own personal family sometimes causes a lot of conflict. I can put on a family / siblings. These are all forms of different kind of conflicts, and we can go on, and I'm trying to go with a few more because I have spent 30 to 40 minutes with students listing conflicts, and a lot of times I have to say, hey, y'all gave me 30. In this school, let's break it down, or in this community center, let's try to break it down to our top 10.
Something that causes conflict in my home is attitude.
Something that causes a conflict in my home is when me and my mother have like a disagreement of what I should or shouldn't do.
Horseplay. Everybody knows that when we have horseplay going on, it starts off very mild, but then it gets ramped up a lot of times based on the audience. Money. A lot of times conflicts are based on money. Instigating. A lot of conflicts come from the people that really are in a conflict, but the naysayers on the outside that are instigating. So, with brainstorming conflict, I've listed several, but is there anything up there that maybe I missed or anything that has created conflicts in your lives that I left out? Think about that, because I'm sure there's some conflicts that you're probably sitting saying, oh, I could put that one down, or he forgot to put this one down. So be thinking about some conflicts to share with us that maybe I missed, because believe me, I know you have some more that could be listed on this board.
Sometimes when people are passive-aggressive or sarcastic, it makes me angry, and that turns into a conflict.
Something that causes conflict in my home is lack of communication. Someone will be upset about something and not really express it to where nobody knows why they're upset, and that causes a lot of conflict sometimes.
So when we brainstorm conflict, you can see that we could go on and on and on. But in order to understand conflict, you have to realize that there are 3 major styles on how you deal with conflict. And I call this, as you can see, my cap. It's like you're wearing a baseball cap. There may be some other styles that you all may think that you know, but I'm just looking at the 3 major styles that we've identified. And the first one is confrontation. As you can see, it spells out CAP, but the first one, the big C, stands for confrontation. Confrontation comes off a little aggressive, but you'll find out later that being a little aggressive in some situations based on relationship building, it's not all that bad sometimes. Just because you see aggressive, don't get it twisted that means a negative thing.
What it looks like to be confrontational is to be hostile and yelling and arguing and stuff.
To be confrontational in a conflict is to kind of go up to the person and address the problem and maybe ask what problem they have and try to solve it right then and there.
Avoidance. I'm not gonna lie, Mr. D uses this a lot. Okay, I've learned to avoid a lot. It's more passive. That's not a negative connotation, that's passive. As you'll find out with all of these, they overlap. So with the passive situation, those are situations in which you see a conflict and you may choose not to engage. You may choose to go the other way. Sometimes not always the most popular, but a lot of times the most effective.
One way to avoid conflict is to just stop talking.
When I'm avoiding the problem, I usually walk away and ignore it and put it aside and kind of try to forget about it.
And last but not least with the P, it's called problem solving, which is assertive, and I call that a win-win situation.
One of the strategies to problem solve is to have the other person tell me what they feel and not me trying to blow up and try to tell everyone what I feel.
To work it out with the other person, try to make an agreement on something that we don't have.
So with these three different styles of how you deal with conflict, the good thing about these is you can overlap. An example of a confrontation situation, a lot of times it's built on relationships. For example, me and my father, it's like my best friend. So I could be aggressive in a positive way with him. If we had an issue, I didn't have to go back 1,000 feet and wait till later until I figured we both cooled off. I could get right with him, face to face, knowing that based on our tightness, that we were going to be all right. And then we would also, be assertive by problem solving, but I could confront my father. Another example though, with my mom, I couldn't. My mom was very outspoken, very demonstrative. She tells it like it is. My mom didn't play. So with my mom, I couldn't confront her. I would sit back, I'd be a little bit more passive, and then later we could problem solve once everything cooled off. Avoidance, when you see that word passive, that doesn't mean that you're soft, doesn't mean that you run away and you like to hide. It means that you just need some time before you jump into that situation. And to be honest, that's me right there. Okay, I use avoidance a lot. Problem solving is when you both can come together, show that you found out that you have worked it out, and you can both talk. And it's kind of like what we say, the win-win situation, nobody loses. But the good thing about these three conflict styles, you can go back and forth and be effective in trying to create a situation where the conflict doesn't get overwhelming.
It's a good idea to be confrontational with someone when the argument is affecting your everyday life. If it's with someone you live with, it's you can't just be mad all the time. You have to confront the argument and you have to work it out just to be able to coexist with each other.
It's a good idea to avoid a problem with someone when they're aggressive or dangerous.
If you think that both of your arguments are valid and reasonable, then you should try to not be aggressive, but to speak with them calmly about how to fix it.
And I call that CAP, and I use this all the time. Like I said, based on relationships, for instance, I might say you're having a confrontation with that teacher you've had a hard time with. I've seen students that want to come right up front and confront the teacher based on the relationship they have with them. I've seen students that maybe want to go back 100 feet and say, I'll deal with that later. Me and this teacher don't get along real well. So you're having a confrontation with your best friend. People wouldn't realize, but a lot of times when you're having a conversation with your best friend, sometimes it's hard to confront, okay, because you're not used to having conflict, so you may want to avoid. And then go back later and say, look, let's work this out. I've had time to chill, time to cool. I think we can talk now. Okay, problem solving, like I said earlier, is that win-win situation where you can be a little aggressive, you can be a little passive at times, but you know that in the end, you're both going to be working it out, or the group's going to be working it out. So if you can rely on these three major styles of conflict and how you handle it, I think things can be a little bit better for you. And like I said, just because you see the word aggressive, it's not always negative. Just because you see the word passive doesn't mean that you run away and hide, that you're soft. Being assertive kind of ties all this together. I use the assertive model a lot when I'm doing peer mediation training, because peer mediation is all about both parties having an understanding that we're going to be all right, we've worked it out, you've got what you needed, I've got what I needed. And with these major conflict styles, think about the way you use conflict styles, and are there any of these conflict styles that maybe you use on a day-to-day basis, or when you're having those major conflicts, is there something maybe that I left out?
My conflict style is more probably assertive.
My personal conflict style is aggressive.
So you tie this all together with all these situations on brainstorming conflict, and believe me, there's a lot more I could put up here. You could put up here racism, bragging, gangs, whatever the conflicts are within your school, your neighborhood, or wherever at, you have different ways and different styles to deal with them. Now let's get this all in a nutshell, is that right now we're not problem solving yet as far as this brainstorming. We're just getting it out there and trying to figure out, if I'm brainstorming, I know that I can go through with these styles, I can at least later on make some good decisions. We'll tie that all in a little bit later when I do the other lessons, but when we get done, you'll see how this ties in with finding solutions. It's been great talking to you all about brainstorming conflict, and I can't wait to get to the next lesson.